Welcome to Nightfall Stories, where darkness tells its own story. Turn off the lights and listen carefully.
In the quiet town of Salem, life moved slowly. Wooden houses stood close together. Candlelight flickered through narrow windows, and every face in the village was familiar. It was a place built on faith, fear, and silence. But that silence didn't last. It began on a cold winter night. A young girl woke up screaming. Her body shook violently, her voice twisted into something unrecognizable, and her eyes rolled back as if she were seeing something no one else could. Soon, more girls began showing the same terrifying symptoms. They spoke of shadows watching them, of unseen hands grabbing their throats, of whispers that came from nowhere yet felt impossibly close. No one could explain it, and when fear has no explanation, it creates its own. That's when the accusations began. Within days, the town spiraled into chaos, marking the beginning of the infamous Salem Witch Trials. People started blaming each other. A glance became suspicion, a whisper became evidence, and a simple disagreement could turn into a death sentence. No one was safe. Among those accused was a woman named Mary Collins. Mary wasn't special. She didn't stand out. She lived a quiet life, kept to herself, and never caused trouble. But sometimes, in places ruled by fear, being ordinary is not enough to save you. One evening, a young girl pointed at Mary and screamed, "She's the one! She's been in my dreams, watching me!" That was all it took. Mary was dragged from her home while neighbors watched in silence. Some believed she was guilty. Others were too afraid to speak. "I'm innocent," she cried. "I swear to God, I've done nothing." But in Salem, fear spoke louder than truth. She was locked inside a small wooden cell at the edge of the village. The room was cold, empty, barely touched by light. As night fell, the air grew heavier. Mary sat alone in the darkness, or at least she thought she was alone. Then she heard it, a whisper, soft, faint, almost like the wind slipping through cracks in the walls. She turned quickly. "Hello?" she called out. No answer. Silence returned, but not for long. The whisper came again, this time closer. It sounded like voices overlapping each other, dozens of them speaking in a language she couldn't understand. Mary pressed herself against the wall, her breathing quick and uneven. "Who's there?" she whispered. And then everything went quiet. Too quiet. Outside, the guards began to notice something was wrong. The night had gone unnaturally still. No wind, no animals, not even the sound of footsteps. Then, suddenly, they heard it. Whispers coming from inside Mary's cell. Not one voice, but many. The guards exchanged nervous glances. One of them slowly stepped forward, his hand shaking as he reached the door. He leaned closer and looked through a narrow crack. What he saw made his blood run cold. Mary was standing in the center of the room, completely still, facing the wall. But her shadow was wrong. It stretched across the wall, darker than it should be, and it was moving on its own. Slowly, unnaturally, it began to twist. The guard's breath caught in his throat. Then, something impossible happened. The shadow started separating from her body, like liquid darkness peeling away. It dropped to the floor and began crawling, not like a human, not like anything natural. It moved toward the door, toward him. The guard stumbled back in terror and threw the door open. Inside, Mary collapsed instantly to the ground.
Her body hit the floor with a dull thud, lifeless, her eyes wide open, frozen in fear. The room was silent again, empty, except for one thing. The shadow was gone. The next morning, the news spread across Salem. Mary Collins was dead. But that wasn't what terrified people the most. That same night, multiple villagers claimed they heard her voice, soft, broken, whispering through the darkness, "I am still here." Days passed, but the fear didn't leave. Some said they saw movement in empty rooms. Others swore their shadows didn't match their movements. A few even claimed they saw something watching them at night. Not a person, not an animal, but something darker, something that didn't belong. Eventually, the trials came to an end. Time moved forward. Salem changed, but not everything disappeared.